And I don't understand pastors who don't listen to great communicators. I'm like, really? Really? You don't listen to other great preachers? What's the matter with you? Everybody I know in any walk of life who's trying to get better at something looks at people who are trying to get better in the same way. So football players look at how other football players play, and golfers watch the swing of other golfers. And teachers watch, like public school teachers watch how other public school teachers teach. If you want to get better, you look at who the best are. Now, when you're looking at other preachers preaching, the last thing you want to do is copy them. But what you do, I was watching Andy Stanley, fantastic communicator. I was watching one of his sermons the other night, and he had an introduction, and he's a very close friend of mine. He preaches at Willow. I preach at his church. Usually his introductions are fabulous. He did an introduction that I felt fell flat. It just didn't work. He thought it was going to be clever, and then he said it, and it kind of didn't work. And he turned and he sat down on his chair and he said, "That introduction didn't work at all, did it?" And everybody laughed. And he said, "I had high hopes for that introduction, and it didn't work." And it was endearing. It was endearing. But what I do when I watch other great preachers, when it seems like they're connecting, I have a little notebook for preaching, and I ask myself, why did that thought connect so deeply? Everybody's listening right now. What was there about that thought? Here's a small thing. Communicators who study communication for a living will say, every time you get up, you walk more than 6 feet away from your lectern, listening goes up 20%. No matter what you're talking about. So just take a little walk. Every once in a while, take a little walk. And I use notes, and sometimes, I know I'm not moving enough, so I'll look at what I'm supposed to be doing. And okay, now I know where I am. So I'll start my walk, and I'll be preaching like that, and I'll get to the end of a thought and go, I got nothing. I walk back here, then I'm lost. I go, excuse me, Okay, here we go. But anyway, just walking helps. Study, watch great preaching, and ask the question, why are they connecting more than I usually connect? But you can work. Every preacher I know can get better at preaching, except the dead ones. They're done. But if you're still alive and want to get better, you can get better. Here's another few little points here. Some pastors have fallen into a rut where their style, people know the style and the general approach that they're going to take before the pastor even starts the sermon. There's no variety. I'm known for a lot of things, but I use a flip chart. It's maddening to most of my friends that I use a flip chart. I should use some high-tech thing. I should use PowerPoint computer. I should have my Apple iPad on. But when I walk over to the flip chart at Willow Creek, I have one just like that, and I start drawing, people howl with laughter. And then I say, I'm not done yet. I'm going to thrill you with my artwork before I'm done with this. It's connection with the congregation. It's an inside joke that we have. And I'll say to them sometimes, I'm thinking about heading toward the flip chart right now. And they'll go, no. And I'll go, huh? You can't stop me. You can't stop me. Here I go. Like that. What is that doing? It's just connecting, gang. It's just connecting. Start a sermon sometime and say, I really only have 4 questions today. Just been wondering. I have 4 questions that are causing great confusion to me. Would you help me wrestle through 4 questions? Everybody's leaning forward. They go, sure, it's better than your normal sermon. Right? So work hard at preaching and teaching. And I know we're going to go to a break here. If you have not figured out a way to break your seating sections down such that more than just the ushers, but some of the, I might as well get into this just a little bit. If I asked you, who's the most relationally magnetic people in your church? Who are the most relationally magnetic people in your church? Is it necessarily your elders? Might not even be close, right? Is it necessarily your worship band? Now, they slept in the van last night. You know, they're not, all right? If I asked you, put together who are the 10 most relationally magnetic people in your church, why aren't they empowered to be friend building during your church services? Why do they just sit like people who aren't relationally magnetic? Why don't you empower them to build friendships and hold these little receptions and collect business cards and follow up on people? They would love to do it. You haven't commissioned them to do it. So they don't think it's important. They don't think you want them to do it. So they'll just sit there like everybody else. But they could be creating 10 friends a week. And if you just had 10 friends a week, you're going to have 120 new people joining your church year after year after year. Just do the math on that. Just 10 friends a week. You know, you're going to have, you know, over the months, over the years, it's 10 friends a month, I meant, if you're doing the math. Yeah, the month. Yep. Okay, I'm supposed to let you go to a break now, so Eric, do you want to take it? Thank you. First session was very fun for me. Hope it was helpful for you. Who has a question about what we talked about or anything else that you would like to bring up? Because I would rather answer questions than preach. You know, go ahead.
All that you've been saying so far in these issues, do you think that changes if you, in a different socio-economic group, for instance, if you're doing a grassroots church?
Yeah, so the question is, the subject matters we've been talking about this morning, does it mainly pertain to a certain context or a certain demographic, or if we were in a totally different demographic, would the conversation change? I think the conversation would change to some extent, given demographic realities, but in general, I think these are the larger issues. You could flip the rank ordering of their importance, but, well, let's look at it the other way. Is bad preaching ever going to help build a church? Is the absence of a welcoming spirit going to help? Is bad worship, no ministry? So you might flip the order of the importance and the urgency with which you produce some of these. I'm thinking right now, we do a lot of work in Central and South America. In Central America, in the 70s and 80s, about half the countries in Central America went through government revolutions. And it scattered the churches into the countrysides. Well, in the countrysides, what became absolutely essential was community. I mean, the people couldn't gather in large groups and have big preaching and big worship things. All they had was each other. So that certainly would have flipped over to the highest priority, is gathering for community and sharing life with each other. When the revolutions were over, they went back into the cities. They found places to worship. And then again, you know, fantastic sermons became very important, but community is still important, and you can maybe change some of those around? It's a very good question. Yes, I'll get you next. Yes.
Can you say something about leadership succession? Because we forecast in coming 5 years, we have large amount of senior pastors to be retired.
Yes, I will say, including yourself? Are you going to go kicking and struggling, or will you go in a friendly fashion? I'm just kidding. In a couple of weeks, Gary, will they hear my opening session? Okay, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because I'm going to spend about 15 minutes in the opening session of the summit this year on this. But I will seed this into your mind because this, in the United States, about, half or 2/3 of the mega churches are going to be turned over to younger leaders in the next 5 or 10 years. So this is happening all over the world. It's not unique here. So here's what we did at Willow. I will turn 61 years old next month, and I've been at the church 37 years, so people know my time is drawing nigh, as they say. So here's how we looked at it. We said the first phase that we need to think about, when you first start saying, okay, the pastor's getting older, he's been around a long time, there's a very necessary planning phase. And I mean, this is really important, where the elders, the pastors sit down and they start having non-emotional, hey, like the way our board chairman started the conversation with me. He said, do you think that you'll still be the senior pastor the day you die? Will you be preaching from the casket? Will you stop preaching the day you die? What do you think? And I said, well, if I die tomorrow, then I probably will preach it right to the end. And he said, obviously, we need at some time to just have a conversation. Are you going to preach till you're 100? Are you going to preach until we have to throw you out? We need to start this conversation. The person that the elders assigned to me, his name is Mike, he did a fabulous job. And I'll tell you about it at the summit. I won't go into that much detail. This took us, I think, 18 months or so, at least a year, maybe more, of just quiet conversations over lunch. He would take me about as far as I could go, and then he could tell that I was getting nervous. Okay? Well, we spent a long time in planning, just saying, yes, at some point I need to leave. It would be good for the church. All right. So that planning can take 2 years, 3 years, 18 months, whatever. Very important time. Now, then what we did is we said, here's the next time barrier. I have X number of years to try to come up with an internal replacement for myself. We have an exceptionally gifted staff. And in fact, right now we have 5 candidates who would like my job. And so I have a wine taster, I have a food taster, 5 internal candidates, and I have X number of years to put them through a process to determine whether or not my successor could be someone internally. We would strongly prefer this, as you all would. Okay. If by this date we don't have an internal candidate, I have another X years to find an external candidate. Then I have to search the world.